Hello, everyone. My name is Gordon, and welcome to Watch and Code Office Hours. This is session number 98. The format of these office hours is really simple. We'll just kind of roll through any questions you have that are related to the content you're going through on Watch and Code. So if there's anything you're stuck with, you can ask me directly and hopefully get unstuck and be able to continue along with what you're learning. So if you're watching on YouTube, just one quick note. This time I've done something a little bit differently. I've posted the call-in link right in the YouTube description below. So there's a call-in link right below this video. You can just click that and get into the Google Hangout where you can ask your question. So that's kind of the only announcement I have for logistics. If you haven't joined the Facebook group, which I mentioned in Practical JavaScript, there's a lesson on that. You should do that because that's where I post updates in case there's any new stuff. It's usually there. Don't expect to get an email from me. So the principal place is the group. So you want to join the group. All the information is in Practical JavaScript. So that's it for me. Update on what I'm working on. I've been kind of working on redoing the sample application for Practical JavaScript in preparation for updating the course, and so I finished doing that last week, at least the first pass of doing that, and now I'm working on what will be 2 new additions to Practical JavaScript. So you can kind of think of it. So right now, Practical JavaScript goes up till version 11. So the stuff I'm working on right now would be like version 12 and version 13, which they don't exist right now, but I'm in the planning stages for preparing that material. And so that's kind of what I'm working on next. I've tried to do all of this in one shot because when working on beginner materials, it's really hard to get the mindset of the beginner. So I kind of have it right now since I've been working on this for maybe 2 or 3 weeks now. I can't remember, but I kind of want to get this whole chunk of work done while I'm in that mindset of having rewatched the whole course and kind of know exactly what people that are doing practical JavaScript are going through. So that's why I've chosen to kind of do all this work in kind of one lump. Yes, that's all I have to say. I'll go ahead and go into questions. So I'll try to call in the order that people called in, but I'll mess it up. I think Andrew was first. Andrew, are you there?
Hey, Gordon. How's it going, man?
I'm good, thanks.
No questions. I figured out my particular holes in knowledge kind of through some accountability meetings, and I'm currently working on them. So I'm just here to support.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Andrew. And good work. Let's do Yagna next. Did you have a question, Yagna? Okay. I think I'll call back in.
Sorry, am I still there?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, there's something going on. So yeah, just going through the book club, things are good. It's just getting more and more complex, but I think I'm able to handle at this point. Just doing a lot of repetitive revision of things that I've gone through. And I hope to continue this learning, and let's see where it goes. But yeah, no questions. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Yagna. Next, I think it was Khan. Khan, what's up?
Yeah. Hey, hi everybody. It's the first time I joined the Monday office hours, and actually it feels really great as a community. So I have a kind of basic questions. Actually, I am on this digesting stage for this advanced course, this to the MVC. I'm kind of completed, but I have a small problem with the debugging. That's when I try to step over to the next function or just pause and play, it all the time it goes to this jQuery code or other code. And actually, I couldn't figure out it. I searched some Stack Overflow and other sources, but maybe I couldn't find it. If anybody can shout out me a document or something else, it would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Good question, Khan. I'll try to show you what you can do about that problem. Let me try to pull up the code so we can look at.
Mozilla, Firefox and Chrome, I think, has a feature, black box, and people generally suggest it to use black box mode, but it didn't work for me. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, you don't need to black box. So the concept of black boxing is that typically in the debugger when there's a step into function button, and black box basically would disable that button for certain files. But you could just as easily not step into those files. Doing that requires you to think a little bit about the execution order of the code. And I recommend actually doing that first before you reach for something I feel like is more severe, like black boxing. Because I think not black boxing forces you to really think about the code execution, which is a good thing to think about. Versus I find that beginners that use black boxing too soon end up not learning about how the code actually executes, which is a problem. So I think black boxing is totally fine once you have a better handle on things. But I would encourage you to try to not reach for it right now.
Actually, first, when I was trying the black boxing, it still goes into this jQuery source code. I don't know, it's normal
Well, that's
thing,
because you're not black boxing correctly.
yes, yeah,
But aside from that, I encourage you to not black box at all right now. I think it's too early. So I'm sharing my screen, and so Khan, what's something that you debugged recently? I'll try to kind of do something close to what you.
I rewrite this toggle exactly this line. It's 153. I just
Sorry here.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we'll need to add something so that we can toggle it. I'll add Khan since that's appropriate, and then I'll try to toggle you, and we're stopped. And so if we stepped into line 154, we would go into our own function index from L. And here, let me make a little bit more room. So if we other people probably don't know or have context for this file, but index from L is a method that we've defined in the application right here. So if we step into that line of code, then we'll just go into this function. So you didn't have any problems with that, right? Did that behave like you wanted it to?
Yeah, so now it makes sense. But when step over this button.
Yes. So let's go ahead and step into index from L. So we're going to go into index from L. And here's where you probably started to get some problems. The reason is because if you step into 125 right now, where we would be stepping into a function call, into the $ function call, right? So the $ is jQuery. And so if we hit step into, then we should go into this function, right? But if you don't want to do that, then you should step over. And then you will just avoid that. So what I just did is I just stepped over it because I realized like, well, if we step into, we're going to go into jQuery. We don't want to do that. And so I just make sure to step over. If you black boxed effectively, it would be the same thing. Instead, except you could hit step into and it would do exactly what I did. It would just skip it and then go to 126. And so, I mean, it doesn't really do anything that you can't do if you kind of mindfully think about which button you want to use.
But also, say, when I clicked this step over, say it goes into jQuery library too.
At the very end, right?
Yeah, at the very end. It's normal or?
That's normal too. So,
okay.
So let me explain. So remember, we were at 150. We were at toggle, right? So where's toggle? Toggle is right here, 154, and we hit step into in 154, and so we called index from L from line 154, right? And so then we went into index from L, and so that's at 126. That means when we finish the execution of index from L, where should we go back to, Khan?
Mm-hmm.
So once I get to the end of index from L, once I get to 133, where, if I hit step over or step into, where should the code go next?
Okay. I shall stop the press the button actually, because that's the end of the code, and then it automatically goes into the jQuery library as a nature.
In this case, it won't. So let's step over and just reach. Wait, what happened? It doesn't. It's not. It doesn't. It looks weird. It's usually highlighted. Oh, it's because I was searching at the same time. Okay, so I'm just stepping through the index from L, and what I want to do is I want to get to the end, and then at the very, very end, we go back to the toggle, which makes sense, right? Because we called index from L, and we got the result. So then we're going to come back to toggle. So when you step into index from L, you're going to go into that function, but then when that function is done, you're going to come back to toggle, right? But the same thing's not going to happen when you get to the end of toggle. That's because toggle was not called by one of our functions. Toggle was called by jQuery. So if you go to the end of toggle, you're going to go into the dispatch function that called toggle. So you can see right here, so toggle was called, but it was called from within dispatch, which was called within element data.handle. And so if you go to the end of 126, then you would expect to go into jQuery. So I'll illustrate that. I'm just going to step over. We could go into render, but then let's say that we stepped into render, we popped back out, and then we got to the end of toggle, and then we hit step over. So now we're finally at the end. And then when I hit step over again, we're going to go into dispatch, which is a jQuery thing. Dispatch. And then if we go to the end of dispatch, then we should go into element data.handle. So that's working as intended. If you want to avoid that, what you need to do is when you get to the end of toggle. So let's toggle con again. Step over, step over. So at this point, you know that there's no other methods that you want to inspect, because if you step over and continue the code execution, you're just going to look at dispatch and element data.handle. So you'll notice if you watch closely in my videos, usually when I get to this point, I hit play. So did you notice that in the videos?
Yeah, I read this one comment. You say watch closely the video, but I rewatch again. I couldn't catch it. Now I can catch it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's hard to notice. It's I guess it is a small detail, but that's why I'll always hit play, because because if we're debugging toggle, that's all we need to know. We don't really want to go into exactly how jQuery registered the event handlers and stuff.
Okay, and also
If
one
that's
quick
something you want to
question.
go into, you could, but it doesn't seem like that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, no. And also when I was doing debugging, say you just say break the point say 154, but I also generally do 155, 156 too, and I shouldn't do it, yeah, actually, if I want to debug the just toggle, because you just break the point say 54, but normally I do 155, 156 because this is the whole function.
Yeah, I mean, there's no problem with what you've done. You can add, you can add 154, 155, and 156, but and you can still debug effectively. But the question is everything you've done essential? Not really, no. The way you can figure out exactly what is essential is start to remove one at a time and see if it really matters. Right. So if I did 154, 155, 156, then we could toggle and I could step over and then hit play, and then I could say, okay, well, I'll remove that one, toggle again. I mean, I can still step over, and then I'll remove this one, and then you can still step over. And then to be exhaustive, you want to test every situation. Well, okay, so then that's where things don't work anymore. So I do need at least one, but more than that, it doesn't hurt, but it's definitely not essential. And the reason I really encourage you to run the same experiment I did is because you're not going to find a post on Stack Overflow that tells you how many breakpoints you need, because it really depends. And so when you find yourself getting into those situations where you're wondering, Gordon did 1, I did 3, do I need 3? Well, the best thing to do is to lay out an experiment and test and see the result. And that will give you the exact answer you want. Does it answer your question, Khan?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Actually, this is just solved my problem.
Awesome. I'm glad that it was helpful. And yeah, and the stuff you're going through now, these are good questions to think about. I always think of what are systems to help you get good at programming. One is just come to office hours, right? So whenever you have a question, you get it resolved. 2 is run these experiments. So kind of like the same thing I did. Instead of just telling you like it's not essential, I just showed you, hey, it's an essential. This is how you can prove it to yourself.
Yeah.
And just you want to get in the habit of running those experiments as often as possible, because you're always going to wonder things like that. So whenever you have a question mark, then just think about what is, like, if I were just like running a science experiment, what is the experiment that I would use to, I have this hypothesis, how can I test and make this a falsifiable hypothesis? Just approach it like the scientific method.
Thank you so much. It makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. And yeah, thanks for joining us. It was good to meet you, Khan. Thanks for the question. Next person I think was Sandeep. Are you there?
Oh yes. Oh,
What's
hey,
up?
how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah. I started accounting JS this week, so this week has been a lot of learning. It's been great so far. I do not have any questions for this week, but also I want to thank Khan for asking the question. So I had a couple of issues with using the debugger. And this demo kind of clarified these questions. And it's good that, like, I think when I was stuck in debugger, I kind of like Googled a few questions for myself, because it's pretty possible that you think that these are easy questions that you don't really care about worrying about. So it's pretty clear right now. So thank you for that. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, it's good to hear from you, Sandeep. Thanks, Khan, for asking that question.
Yeah, thank you.
Glad it was helpful. Let's move to Scotty next. Scotty, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi. Thanks for making the course, by the way.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
So I got two simple questions, I think. At the very bottom of Accounting JS, he uses the bracket notation and then the root accounting equals lib. And then just a couple lines of...
Can you share your screen so people can...
I've never done this before.
Okay. So if you hover at the top left, there is going to be a green button with the arrow pointing to the right.
Do you want to share the code screen or the...
Yeah, just share the code so that you can kind of narrate what you're talking about.
This right here? Am
Okay.
I doing it?
Yeah, can you Command plus
oh yeah,
a few times, or Control plus? Okay, cool.
I just was wondering why, or is this just, does it make a difference that he's using bracket notation here and then dot notation here?
What do you think?
I don't think so.
Kind of in to piggyback off what I was talking to Sandeep. I mean, Khan, about how can you verify that this matters or doesn't matter? What are...
It's just, I don't think it matters. It's just, I've noticed in a few courses I've taken that there was one instance where they were using it was EJS where it did matter.
Mm-hmm. Well, so for example, what would be a test that you can run to see, at least in this case, if it matters?
Oh well, I could just switch them out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, you could do that. Or you could do, that would be a good one. Or you could do root bracket accounting triple equals root dot accounting. That would tell you the same thing, more directly, a little bit more directly.
Well, I guess what is it a style thing then? Like
yeah.
why would you, yeah.
So in this case, it doesn't matter. So in this case, I'd call it probably inconsistency, which is not a good thing. So I'd probably just say just pick one and stick with it. But there are certain cases. There are certain cases where it does matter. So can you open up a Chrome console?
Yeah. Oops. Sorry.
It's hard to type live.
Okay.
Yeah, so create a object. You can name it whatever you want. Just make it blank. Perfect. Now create a property called you call it, just use your, call it watch and code, but with hyphens. I want a property called watch and code, but separate. Yeah, like that.
Oops.
So, and I want it equal to the URL for the site.
For yours?
Yeah. So I want a property on my object watch dash and dash code, and I want it equal to the string of the site URL.
I do. Why didn't that work?
Okay, so we've tried using dot notation. Why don't you try the other?
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, I remember this.
Okay, now let's inspect my object. So what are your observations?
Yeah, I do remember that you have to use the brackets in certain situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't honestly remember all the situations. I'm sure you could look them up.
I think I
But
have it saved somewhere.
it doesn't really matter. Like honestly, I've programmed for years without knowing what the rules are. But if it doesn't work, you can just use bracket notation.
Gotcha.
That's it. That's the rule I follow.
Okay.
I always use dot notation unless it doesn't work, and then I just use bracket notation. And
Okay.
so that's a really simple rule. You really don't need to memorize anything. Just let the error tell you to fix it, and then you'll fix it.
Okay.
So in this case, there's no error. So yeah, so my feedback on this would be there's no reason for us to have inconsistency here. Just
Okay.
and that was probably just a mistake. I don't think that they consciously put brackets for any particular reason. It just happened.
Okay. So my other question is on the function check currency format around line 133. The first if the type of function, then it equals the function with the to invoke it with the parentheses. I was just wondering if does that actually affect this format then after that? Because the reason I'm a little confused is because it doesn't return right away. Or is this format still going to be the same as the parameter, like without the parentheses? I didn't get to run this I was just finishing this video when I signed in, so I didn't get to run through the debugger yet.
Mm-hmm. So if you were to run through the debugger, what are this? So the important thing with kind of investigating these things, and kind of funny enough, I feel like this question is very similar to Khan's question. It sounds very different, but it's an experimentation question. Like, how do you run the experiment to get the answer? I'd want to think about the different inputs to check currency format, how you can play around with the input such that you can observe the answer that you're interested in. What Scotty, what do you think would be two sensible inputs? So right, the variable in this case is what we pass in as the format argument. So, in case 1, what would you put in for format? In case 2, what would you put in for format? All the way up to like n cases. Like, what are the different things you'd want to, like, how would you want to vary that?
Oh no, I'm not sure if I asked that correctly. What I mean is once this is set to format with the parentheses, that isn't going to affect this, right? This is still just the same as the. I still have.
Well, so.
I kind of have with the ifs that don't have else's. They kind of confuse me.
Yeah. So. So can you explain to me in English what's happening in 137?
If it's a format, it just wants to be able to put the parentheses there to invoke it.
No, that doesn't. What you said is true, but you've missed a lot of other crucial points. Let's start with the condition. How would you describe this condition?
You mean the Boolean part?
Yeah, if in 137.
It's just checking to see if it's a function.
Okay, that's.
And if it is a function, add the parentheses.
So the if it is a function, then blah blah blah. That part is. Let's work on that. So the part after the if statement check. So format equals format.
Mm-hmm.
How do you describe what's happening there.
I was just thinking if it's just checking if it's a function, or if the type of equals function.
Yeah, but that's the condition. But what happens if that condition is true? So let's say format is a function, and then what?
Then the function is, it's not called, but it would be called at the return. Correct?
I don't know what that means. So, okay, I'll fill out the last part for you. If format is a function, then call format, grab the return value, and assign the return value of format to format itself. So let's say that format is a function that returns 1. So it starts off as a function. And then by the time we're at line 139 or 138, format is a number. So wait, sorry, let me rephrase that. So format is a function that returns the number 1. Okay, so at 136, format's a function. But by the time we get to 138, format is the number 1. Right? Because format is a function that returns 1, and then that return value is assigned to the format variable.
I think I still need to stare at this function for a while.
You really do need to run this through the debugger.
Yeah.
And if it helps, write it in the normal if style. So what I would do is after the condition, open curly brace, return format equals format, and then enter close curly brace, if that helps you.
Okay.
Do you want to just do that right now? So right before the first format, have an opening curly brace.
In the code right here?
Yeah. So open curly brace, hit enter, and then go to the next line. Yeah, if that helps. So that's your homework.
Okay.
And remember, the key thing is you want to vary format. So sometimes you want to pass it in as a function. Sometimes you'll pass it in as, I don't honestly remember all the things format could be. But think about all the scenarios all the ways format could change. Run all those scenarios, inspect them. One of them is function. I guess pay close attention to the function case. But you'll probably learn a lot from looking at the other cases as well.
Yeah, I was about to get to that, then it was 6 o'clock, and I was like, oh, I want to get on the. Yeah, I'll probably figure it out.
Okay. Yeah, and if you have trouble figuring that out, then let me know.
Okay.
And you can post in questions too.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. So next we'll go to Hernando. Are you there?
Hey, Gordon, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks. How about you?
Not too bad. I'll tell you where I am. I've finished. I'm doing the beasts. I've just done the first challenge, and so I left my. I mean, I didn't. It wasn't my solution. Wasn't as good as some of the other solutions out there. But I don't know how many. I don't know if anyone revised their solutions once they looked at everyone else's. But I left my original one up there. And I've taken my time basically to look at everyone else's. Well, I think there's so many solutions up there. I just looked at half of them, and I took the time to revise certain topics, like for example, try catch, error handling, and this, for example. Instead of doing a whole revision of the course like I wanted to do, you said to use it as a progress onto the beasts, and then just as you encounter topics that you've forgotten, just revise it. And I think that's actually a better way. It's actually more fun that way. So I've been doing that, and I've also been doing the HTML of the underscore index page. I've been learning HTML just by looking at that and investigating the HTML of the page. Instead of like doing any HTML course, I'm just like learning it by just looking at current code that we're experiencing. So yeah, haven't had any issues. That the first beast challenge did knock me on my ass for a while. I couldn't figure out how to like throw in an array until I'd done some, because I wasn't actually, I mean, I wasn't looking at anyone else's solution. That would be cheating. So but eventually I got the solution, but it wasn't as neat as some of the other people's solution. But yeah, that was about it.
Hey, awesome. Thanks for the update and nice work on that problem. Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad sounds like it was kind of helpful. The only real trick with that one was just to figure out the array.
Yeah, I mean that was because I mean for I could not figure out how the hell am I going to pass in, because I mean array could vary in length, and I was thinking, how can you do it without having a limit on the number of arguments? And so I was looking at the arguments object on the MDN docs, and then I saw apply, and then I remembered apply, and I checked it out, and it passes in it the arguments as an array, and so that was it. Mm-hmm. But it really took me. I just couldn't figure it out at all. I mean, it took me a few hours actually. I mean, I wasn't sitting in front of the computer for a few hours, but eventually I got it. But it wasn't as neat because I didn't implement any error checking for whether the arguments were actually in an array, and so I did take that opportunity to then, when I looked at some of the other really good solutions where that was done. First, I looked at Yagner's, and when I saw Yagner's, I posted my solution up there, and it was like only 8 lines. When I saw Yagner's, it was like 50 lines. I quickly deleted my one. I thought I read the question wrong. And then I went back and I realized what Yagner had done it really thoroughly as far as error checking, you know? So
yeah, I wouldn't really worry about too much about addition. So the key thing when you look at other people's solutions is not the extra stuff that they added.
Yeah,
but the core essential stuff, like, is that different?
Yagner scared the life out of me. When I looked at it, and it was 50 lines long, and mine was like 7 or 8. I thought, oh my God, I've read it wrong. I better take it out, take it down. Yeah. But I mean, I used the opportunity to really study the try-catch error handling thoroughly. So that was cool, because I'd forgotten all of that. And yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna do the next one. I'll start it tomorrow, and as I encounter things, I will just use it as an opportunity to revise basically on the previous material until I get a solution.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds perfect. It's a good plan. I'm glad that that you followed the advice and just kept on going forward, and then kind of selectively.
You've got to tell Andy to do that as well, because I think he's trying to revise everything.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think
there's the difference, though.
Yeah,
I can tell he knows more.
Yeah, I think a lot of students, and Andrew, I'm not talking about your case in particular, but some students just feel like they just need it. And if you really feel like that, then maybe you do. It's just really hard to tell, because it's not like, I'm not giving out badges and stuff. So, and you don't get a certain number of points and then you pass. So it's a judgment call, right? And so there's some judgment and error involved. And so if you feel like you need to go back and you really do feel that way, then maybe you do. But maybe you don't. so yeah, it's just so
much more satisfying when you're actually dealing with a problem and you have to, solve it, as opposed to just like learn, because as opposed to just revising,
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I think that's where my role, I need to step it up, because kind of giving you exercises that force you to review is what I need to do more of, rather than, because reviewing for review's sake, I don't think is it's just very hard to do. So you should try to make your life easier rather than harder. So like, for example, like the digestion techniques that I think Con, you were going through that. Stuff like that is really good because it forces you to review for sure, but it also forces you to review while you're doing something. And it's something that it's not easy, and it's hard, but it's definitely within your capability. Like you should be able to do it, and in a painful way. Like you should be able to do it painfully, and it should feel very, very uncomfortable. But through going through that process, you'll get much better, and you'll end up reviewing it without even realizing it. So I think I need to do more stuff like that. Hernando, did you have anything else that you wanted to
No,
share?
I'm cool. I'm good.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for dropping by. Let's move to, I'm losing track of who I've talked to. I think Gabe, we haven't gotten to you yet.
Hey, Gordon. Yeah, I'm just kind of here. This is my first time just here to learn and listen, and just wanted to thank you for creating the course and having these office hours.
Oh, you're welcome. Where are you with the material right now?
I'm getting through functions and the practical JavaScript, so just starting. Okay. Just kind of hard to find motivation. I'm a full-time software engineer, so just hard finding time to, after working 8 hours of coding and coming back home and coding. So,
if possible, I recommend doing it in the morning if you can.
I probably can make that work. It's a good idea because the more you put it off later in the day, the less likely you are to do it.
Right. Then the hard part is going to bed early. So like as long as you go to bed early, you'll get it done. But going to bed early, like psychologically, is, I think, I don't know, it depends on the person. But for me, it feels easier than working at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But definitely. I don't know. It depends on your personality.
Yeah, I'll give that a shot. Thanks, Gordon.
Yeah, for sure. Joe, what's up?
Not much. How you doing, Gordon?
Good. Same.
So yeah, I just finished the section that comes right after testing. So I guess it's the simple test section, or yeah, it's called simple test. So it's where we make the improvements to the tiny test code, and I'm about to start Accounting.js, and I feel pretty good about it. I feel like there's a few things I could do before I just go ahead, because I watched the first video of Accounting.js, and the introduction is kind of good, and it kind of prepared me. I was starting to feel like it was something I would just like kind of run right through, but it's definitely not the case. I think it's more comprehensive than everything else. So, but I'm excited about it. Is what it's really going on. So I'm kind of happy that I've come this far. And yeah, I thought that Scotty's question was an interesting question, because I noticed with some of the docs that you'll see that formatting where they don't have the brackets, and I don't know what you think about that, but it seems like it's not the best. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't like it that much either. I think it is kind of a little confusing. So yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty stoked about the course still. I've been enjoying my sessions when I get to study, and it's been going pretty well. So I think that's all. I can't really think of anything I have to ask. If I have a question, I'll ask it in the offline if something pops up. But right now, I can't think of anything specific.
Okay, cool. Thanks for the update, Joe, and good work. I like the consistency. It's great.
Appreciate it. Nice.
Yeah, just a note about one thing of a big pet peeve is one way to multiple ways of doing the same thing. Multiple ways of doing the same thing are only valuable if you actually get a benefit from the different ways, like a real benefit. Very often in programming, you get a fake benefit of you saved like 4 keystrokes. And a lot of programmers think that is awesome, but it's really not, because now you have 2 ways of doing it. One way everyone's used to, another way is 4 keystrokes less than the normal way. But then every single time people read it, it looks so weird, and they have to take a second and waste their time and process this thing that saved you 4 keystrokes of you typing it once, and that code lasts for years. And then every single time someone reads it, they waste time. And you just create this like cost. And I wish people would think about the bigger picture when they make these kinds of decisions. Sometimes saving 4 keystrokes is not worth it. And so I kind of have a hardline rule for myself when I code. It just be really boring. That's why consistency is so important, because it allows you to read things really quickly. And because there's just a shape of the code that you can just look at, versus having to dissect every single line, right? That's not, it seems great only in a very small moment of time if you're very narrow-minded about it. So think about the consequences of saving 4 keystrokes. Tanner, I think you're the last one.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I'm just here to watch and code.
Okay. Cool. Thanks, Tanner.
Yeah.
Your screen is...
Yeah, sorry.
Can't see you.
I thought it had to do with like how often I reset my computer, but apparently it doesn't. It's just random.
Okay, well, I'm glad that the sound is good. All right. Well, we will end the broadcast soon. There was a question in the YouTube chat. Since we have a little bit of time, I will get to it. So the question is from Martin Masson. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Okay, so Martin's question is, don't know if you'll see this, Gordon, but my question is, I'm unsure where to start when planning an application. I wonder, do you have some kind of blueprint or checklist you follow when you plan applications? Not really, no. There are a couple of guidelines I follow, but they're very loose. Basically, it's kind of like creating a to-do list and breaking up work into the smallest pieces possible that you can just check off one by one. And that's kind of I think the most important part of building an application, because you might think, oh, I want to build a self-driving car or something, but then you have to kind of break that down, right? And you have to break it down into what I call atomic units of work. I call them atomic because they're like atoms. That you can't really break them down any further. And so you want to break a large body of work into the smallest units of work possible. So you want to think about that problem of breaking that large project down into very, very small pieces of work. And then you want to do it again, because the pieces of work you thought were small, you could break them down further until you go over and over and you can't break it down any further. And you have your atoms. Once you have that, you want to order them and work on them in a way that makes sense. So that depends on your constraints, right? So if you're building a car, money might be a constraint. So you might work on the cheapest things first. And then once you get more money, then you can work on a larger body of things. maybe the constraint is skill. So if you have a really difficult project where you're unsure about how to do 10 things, then don't work on those things first. Work on the things that you know about first. Maybe it's the constraint is you want to work on it as efficiently as possible, or maybe you just have to do it in a certain order because the work is sequential. That's pretty much it. And then you just start doing them, start knocking off the atoms one after another. So that's how I think about really doing any kind of work, not just applications. The other thing you want to think about when you're coding is don't worry too much about the language or implementation details. Think about what has to be done. So for example, if you think about a to-do list, so to do, let me see, something like that, where you have a list of items. I can't, wait. Can I get to the site right here? Okay. So if we look at the JavaScript version, like when you're trying to build something, you don't want to immediately think about like, what's the language I'm going to use? What are the methods? All this stuff. Just think about high level things like I need a way to store the list. So that has to be something I think about. I need a way to like add things to the list, right? And so you want to think about what conceptually has to be done first and have the requirements out almost, but they should be very specific, like English requirements, or whatever language you like to think in. And once you have that really detailed work described, like those atoms described in English, you can translate those things to code very quickly. And so you really, it comes back to thinking about the smallest units of work, describing them precisely in English or your chosen language, your chosen natural language, and then taking those things that need to be done and translating that into code. So that's how I think about it. I'm just looking through the other comments now. Hey, Alex. Andrew joined. All right, I think that's it. Okay, so we're just about at time. So I will end the broadcast right now. What I typically do after the broadcast ends is stick around in this Google Hangout off the air and have a kind of group chat. So if you want to stick around for that, then call into the Hangout now. I don't know if there's room right now, but usually at the end, a considerable number of people sign off, and then there's going to be room if you want to join, if you're just watching from YouTube right now. So yeah, that's it. I hope it was helpful. If you've anything you want to say, feedback, questions, or whatever, you can email me, gordon@watchandcode.com, and I'll be happy to chat with you there. And if not, I hope to see you next week and hope that you have a good, focused, productive week. All right, I'll see you, everyone.